But I never dreamed in a million years that I could actually meet these people and get to play with them. Yeah. That was the first time I heard Buddy Guy. Mm-hmm. And you know, that record is wild. Yeah. Now, so was B.B. King's. I had an album that was a live B.B. King album, supposedly greatest hits.
Jimmie Vaughan is one of the most respected names in blues guitar. As the older brother of the legendary Stevie Ray Vaughan and as a founding member of the fabulous Thunderbirds, Jimmie spent decades studying the blues from the inside out. He didn't just play the music, he lived it, breathed it, and traced it all the way back to its roots. When Jimmie Vaughan talks about guitar players, people listen, because when he speaks about the blues, he's not reading from a book. He's speaking from a lifetime of listening, learning, and playing alongside some of the greatest musicians who ever picked up a guitar. Jimmie's taste in guitar playing is very specific. He doesn't care about speed. He doesn't care about how many notes you can squeeze into a bar. What he cares about is feel. He cares about tone, timing, authenticity, and whether or not the music makes you feel something deep inside. That's the standard he holds himself to, and it's the same standard he uses when he talks about the players he admires most. His knowledge of blues history is something that even the most dedicated music scholars respect. He has heard thousands of records, played with blues legends in person, and absorbed the tradition in a way that very few modern players have. In this piece, we're going to walk through Jimmie Vaughan's top 10 favorite blues guitar players of all time. These are the players who shaped his understanding of what the blues really is. Some of them are world-famous names, others are a little more under the radar, but every single one of them represents something real and honest about the music. If you're a fan of the blues, or if you're just getting started and want to understand where it all came from, this list is a perfect place to begin. Before we dive in, if you love blues history and want to keep learning about the legends who built this music from the ground up, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. We put out content regularly about the guitarists, stories, and recordings that made the blues what it is today. There's a whole world of music waiting for you here, and we'd love to have you along for the journey. Now let's get into it. Starting at number 10, we have Guitar Slim. Now, Guitar Slim is not always the first name people think of when they list the all-time greats, but Jimmie Vaughan has a deep appreciation for what this man brought to the blues. Guitar Slim, whose real name was Eddie Jones, came out of New Orleans in the early 1950s and created a style that was like nothing anyone had heard before. His most famous recording was a song called The Things That I Used to Do, and when people first heard that record, it stopped them in their tracks. The guitar tone on that song was distorted and aggressive in a way that was completely revolutionary for that era. Most blues guitar at the time was relatively clean and controlled. Guitar Slim sounded like he was playing through a machine that was barely holding itself together, and it worked perfectly. What Jimmie Vaughan loved about Guitar Slim was the combination of two things that don't always go together: genuine showmanship and genuine feeling. Slim was known for wearing the most outrageous, brightly covered suits you could imagine. He would walk out into the audience while playing, dragging a guitar cable that was sometimes hundreds of feet long, just so he could move through the crowd and get right in people's faces. But here's the thing, it wasn't just a gimmick. When Slim played, you could feel the emotion behind every note. The theatrics and the authenticity existed at the same time, and that's a very rare thing. Jimmie Vaughan took a lesson from that. You can be exciting on stage and still be real. You don't have to choose between entertainment and honesty. Guitar Slim proved that both things can live together in the same performance, and that's why he earns a spot on this list. Moving to number 9, we have Clarence Gatemouth Brown. If you've never heard of Clarence Gatemouth Brown, you're in for a real treat. This man was one of the most versatile musicians Texas ever produced, and that is saying something, because Texas has produced an extraordinary amount of musical talent over the decades. Gatemouth Brown didn't just play blues, he played country, jazz, Cajun music, swing, and just about anything else that crossed his path. And he didn't play any of these styles halfway, he played them all with complete mastery and total conviction. His guitar tone was clean and precise, which was actually pretty different from a lot of blues players of his generation. He had a picking technique that showed clear influences from country and jazz, and when he played a fast run or a swinging line, it had a sharpness and clarity to it that was immediately recognizable as his own. He also played fiddle at an extremely high level, which further demonstrated how broad his musical abilities really were. Jimmie Vaughan admired Gatemouth Brown because he refused to be put in a box. He didn't let anyone tell him that a blues player was only supposed to play one kind of music. He went wherever his curiosity and talent took him, and the result was a body of work that represented the full range of what Texas music could be. For Jimmie Vaughan, Gatemouth Brown was proof that great musicians transcend labels and that mastering your instrument means being able to play anything with honesty and skill. Number 8 on the list is Freddie King. Now here is a name that any serious blues or rock guitar fan should know well. Freddie King was a powerful, aggressive Texas blues player who helped bring the blues to a whole new generation of listeners. His instrumental recordings, especially a track called Hideaway, became absolutely essential listening for any guitarist who wanted to understand how electric blues guitar was supposed to feel and sound. Hideaway, in particular, became so famous that it was covered by musicians all over the world, and it's still considered one of the defining blues instrumentals ever recorded. What made Freddie King's playing so distinctive was the combination of his technique and his attack. He used his bare fingers in a thumb pick, which gave his playing a very particular feel, warm and full, but also with a sharp edge that cut right through the mix. His bending technique was aggressive and confident, and his vibrato had a quality that was all his own. He could play a slow, emotional blues and break your heart with it, or he could tear through a fast shuffle and make the whole room jump at the same time. Jimmie Vaughan studied Freddie King's records deeply, paying close attention to his tone and the way he constructed his solos. King was a direct bridge between traditional Texas blues and the kind of electric blues rock that would influence players like Eric Clapton and Mike Bloomfield. For Jimmie Vaughan, King represented the perfect combination of Texas roots and modern electric power.
Coming in at number 7 is Lowell Fulson. Lowell Fulson is another player who doesn't always get the recognition he deserves in mainstream conversations about blues history, but among serious students of the music, his name carries a great deal of weight. His most famous song, Reconsider Baby, became one of the great blues standards, recorded by countless artists over the decades. But beyond that one song, Fulson had a whole body of work that showed a guitarist with a genuinely sophisticated approach to the music. What set Fulson apart was the way he blended blues feeling with a more refined, jazzy sensibility. His guitar tone was warm and clear, and his note choices reflected a harmonic knowledge that went beyond straightforward blues patterns. He had clearly absorbed the influence of jazz and used it to add a layer of sophistication to his playing without ever losing the core emotional honesty that makes the blues what it is. Jimmie Vaughan appreciated this balance enormously. It's one thing to play blues with raw power and emotion. It's another thing entirely to play it with that same emotion, but also with intelligence and restraint. Fulson could do both, and he made it sound completely natural and effortless. For Vaughan, Fulson was an example of how the blues could be elevated without being watered down, and how a player could be both deep and refined at the same time. Number 6 belongs to T-Bone Walker, and this is a name that absolutely belongs near the top of any serious discussion about blues guitar history. T-Bone Walker is widely considered one of the founding fathers of electric blues guitar history. Before T-Bone came along and started showing people what an amplified guitar could do in a blues setting, the whole vocabulary of electric blues guitar simply didn't exist in the way we know it today. His recording of Call It Stormy Monday is considered one of the foundational documents of the blues, and the chord changes and guitar style he used on that song became a template that players have been following ever since. T-Bone's style was smooth and jazzy, with a very clean, warm tone that was completely different from the rougher, more aggressive styles of some of his contemporaries. His single note lines flowed with incredible grace and taste, and his timing was impeccable. He never played anything that felt rushed or out of place. Everything he did on the guitar was measured and intentional. He was also known for his incredible showmanship. He would do splits on stage, play the guitar behind his head, and generally put on a spectacular performance. But just like Guitar Slim, the showmanship never came at the expense of the music. T-Bone Walker was always playing with complete musical seriousness, even while doing something physically outrageous. Jimmie Vaughan studied T-Bone Walker's records extremely carefully. He learned his chord voicings, his phrasing, and the way he approached the electric guitar as a vehicle for expression. His influence on B.B. King was direct and acknowledged. His influence on the entire tradition of Texas blues was enormous. Vaughan has said that T-Bone Walker essentially invented the language that all electric blues guitarists speak, and that's not an exaggeration. He created the blueprint that every player who came after him has built upon in one way or another. At number 5, we have Lightnin' Hopkins, and this is a name that means everything to anyone who loves raw, honest Texas blues. Lightnin' Hopkins was a one-of-a-kind figure in American music. He recorded an extraordinary number of songs over the course of his career, and what's remarkable is that across all of those recordings, he never lost what made him special. His playing was always loose and free, following his vocal phrasing in a way that felt completely natural and uncontrived. When Hopkins played, it sounded like the guitar was having a conversation with his voice, responding to what he sang, finishing his sentences, and expressing what words couldn't quite capture. His tone was raw, whether he was playing acoustic or electric, and he never seemed particularly interested in impressing anyone with technical ability. That was completely beside the point for Hopkins. What mattered was the feeling, and the feeling was always there in abundance. Jimmie Vaughan considered Lightnin' Hopkins to be the essence of real Texas blues. There's no pretense in Lightnin' Hopkins' music. There's no calculation or commercial consideration. It's just a man and a guitar, playing exactly what he feels in the moment, and the result is music that sounds as honest and direct today as it did when it was recorded. Vaughan took a fundamental lesson from Hopkins, that authenticity always beats technical perfection, and that the most important thing a blues player can do is play the truth. Number 4 is Guitar Jr., who later became known as Lonnie Brooks, and this is a choice that reflects Jimmie Vaughan's appreciation for the broader Gulf Coast blues tradition that stretched from Texas through Louisiana. Lonnie Brooks was a Louisiana man through and through, and his guitar style reflected the unique musical culture of that region in every note he played. His music was a blend of blues and Louisiana funk and rhythm, and it had an infectious, groovy quality that made people want to move their bodies, even while it was also making them feel something emotionally. Brooks's tone was warm and funky, perfectly suited to the swamp blues that he had developed over years of playing in Louisiana and later in Chicago. His rhythm playing was solid and driving, with a kind of steady momentum that pushed songs forward with real power. But he could also cut loose with stinging lead lines when the moment called for it. What Jimmie Vaughan appreciated about Lonnie Brooks was the way he kept Louisiana blues traditions alive and vital. He represented a part of the blues world that didn't always get as much attention as the Chicago or Texas sides of things, but that had its own deep roots and its own authentic sound. For Vaughan, Brooks was proof that the blues and funk didn't belong separately, they belonged together, and when a player brought both of them to the table simultaneously, the result was something really special. Number 3 is Jimmy Reed, and this choice tells you everything you need to know about Jimmie Vaughan's values as a blues listener and player. Jimmy Reed was not a flashy guitarist. He was not technically complex. He did not play fast runs or intricate solos or anything that would make a guitarist with a focus on technique particularly impressed. What Jimmy Reed did was something much harder to teach and much rarer to find. He had groove. His guitar playing on songs like Big Boss Man had an infectious, hypnotic quality that was completely irresistible. When you heard Jimmy Reed play, you just fell into the pocket of the music, and you didn't want to come out.
What made Reed's approach even more remarkable was that he was usually singing and playing harmonica at the same time he was playing guitar, which is not a small feat. And yet the guitar playing never seemed like it was struggling to keep up with everything else going on. It was loose and easy, like it cost him nothing at all. His tone was warm and slightly distorted, perfectly suited to his laid-back, unhurried style. Jimmie Vaughan has spoken about how Reed taught him that groove and feel matter more than anything else in music. It's easy to be impressed by a player who can play 100 notes a minute. It's much harder to create a feeling that pulls people in and holds them there. Jimmy Reed knew how to do exactly that, and he did it with a simplicity that made it look almost effortless. That is genuine mastery, and Vaughan recognized it completely. Now we come to number 2, and this is B.B. King, one of the most celebrated and beloved figures in blues history, and a name that needs no introduction to most people who have any interest in this music.
B.B. King spent decades as the ambassador of the blues, bringing the music to audiences around the world who might never have encountered it otherwise. His guitar, which he famously named Lucille, produced one of the most recognizable sounds in all of popular music, a sweet, sustained, singing tone that seemed to carry real human emotion in every note. What made B.B. King so extraordinary as a guitar player was his absolute commitment to expression over technique. He never played fast. He never cluttered his solos with unnecessary notes. Every single note he played was chosen for maximum emotional impact, and he made each one count. His vibrato and bending technique became the standard by which other blues guitarists were measured, and his ability to make a single note speak volumes was something that guitarists spent entire careers trying to understand and replicate. Jimmie Vaughan saw B.B. King perform many times throughout his life and studied his playing with great care and attention. He was drawn to the way King communicated so much with so little. Songs like "The Thrill Is Gone" demonstrated how a guitarist could take a minimal approach and turn it into something that felt absolutely complete and deeply moving. Vaughan has said that B.B. King proved that fewer notes played with more feeling will always win over more notes played with less. That's a principle that has guided Vaughan's own playing throughout his entire career. And then we arrive at number 1, the guitarist that Jimmie Vaughan places above all others, Muddy Waters. This choice is not surprising to anyone who understands the blues deeply, but it's worth taking the time to really explain why Muddy Waters deserves this spot and what it means that Vaughan places him first. Muddy Waters, born McKinley Morganfield in Mississippi, grew up playing the raw, acoustic Delta blues that he heard all around him as a young man. When he moved to Chicago in the 1940s, he brought that Delta tradition with him and did something that changed music forever. He electrified it. He picked up an electric guitar and turned the Delta blues into something that could fill a room, something with force and power and authority that the acoustic tradition simply couldn't match in a noisy urban environment. In doing so, he invented Chicago blues, and Chicago blues eventually gave birth to rock and roll as we know it today. Muddy Waters' guitar playing was powerful and commanding. His slide work was aggressive and emotional, with a tone that was thick and distorted in a way that felt almost physical. When he played, you didn't just hear the music, you felt it. His rhythm playing drove his band with incredible swing and authority, and the musicians who played with him, legends like Little Walter, Jimmie Rodgers, and others, were among the greatest in blues history. The whole ensemble moved as one powerful unit because Muddy Waters led it with such strength and clarity of vision. What Jimmie Vaughan responds to most deeply in Muddy Waters is not just the guitar playing in isolation, but the complete vision of what the music was supposed to be. Waters understood that the blues was about something real and serious. It was not entertainment in a lightweight sense. It was a way of expressing the deepest human feelings: struggle, longing, desire, resilience, and he played it with the gravity and conviction that those feelings deserved. Every recording Muddy Waters made in his prime stands as a monument to what the blues can be when it is played with total honesty and total commitment. Jimmie Vaughan has credited Waters as the foundation of everything he himself plays. The values that Muddy Waters embodied, authenticity, power, deep feeling, respect for tradition, and the courage to push the music into new territory, are the same values that have guided Jimmie Vaughan's own career from the very beginning. It's no accident that Waters comes in at number 1. He is the source, he is the root. And for Jimmie Vaughan, that's where the story always begins and always returns to. Looking at this list as a whole, there's a very clear and consistent theme running through every single choice Jimmie Vaughan has made. None of these players were chosen because of technical speed or complexity. None of them are on the list because they could impress other guitarists at a clinic or a competition. Every single one of them is here because they played with genuine emotion and real soul. They played the blues like they meant it, like it came from somewhere deep and true inside them, and that's exactly the quality that Jimmie Vaughan has spent his entire musical life chasing and honoring. From Guide Slim's theatrical wildness to Muddy Waters' foundational authority, from Lightnin' Hopkins' raw conversational honesty to B.B. King's expressive minimalism, these 10 guitarists form a picture of what the blues is at its best. They represent different regions, different styles, and different approaches to the instrument, but they all share the one quality that Jimmie Vaughan considers absolutely non-negotiable. They were real. Their music came from a genuine place, and it arrived at a genuine place inside the listener. That is the blues. That is what it has always been, and that is what Jimmie Vaughan has dedicated his life to preserving and celebrating. If this kind of deep dive into blues history is something you enjoy, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you think. Do you agree with Muddy Waters at the top of the list? Are there guitarists you think should have been included? We love hearing from people who are passionate about this music, and your thoughts help us keep making content that matters to the blues community. Hit the like button if you learned something today, and we'll see you in the next one.